Ladies and gentlemen, but mostly gentlemen, welcome back to Larry Talks with the Leaguie. This is a continued series where we are previewing the upcoming NRL season. And in our last video, we spoke about the bottom 5 teams, which were the Knights, the Titans, the Dragons, the Rabbitohs, and the Tigers. But in this video, we're going to be talking about the Dolphins, the Sea Eagles, the Eels, and the Cowboys. Leaguie, let's start with the Dolphins. A team that is now in their 3rd NRL season. Started with a finals berth, very exciting for them. Were doing really well at points last season, but then kind of fell away through the second half. Where are the strengths for the Dolphins?
The Dolphins have a really solid 1-17 team, and I think not just that, but as well they've got so much depth in their side. I mean, I've seen a lot of best 17s for them that don't include the likes of Felice Corpus. You know, when you've got a guy like that sitting outside the team, it just really goes to show the quality they have. We've got high quality news as well in the forwards coming back from injury, the likes of Tom Flakeler, now Tom Gilbert, who's missed so much game time, but he'll now be back. So I really think that almost the sky's the limit for them coming into this season, that they've built so well. You look at key positions for them like fullback, quality with the hammer. Isaiah Katoa is already one of the premier 7s in the game. And a guy like Jeremy Marshall-King, who I think is not spoken about as much as he should be, he's still got so much quality about him. Really excited for the Dolphins.
Yeah, I think the kookaburra in the tree is too. I tend to agree with you. The Dolphins are such an interesting side. They've got what I call the perfect blend between experience and youth. I know Harmsworth will be coming back from injury, but you've spoken about it. Their spine is so healthy, and I think in order to be any threat in this competition, you need a strong spine, and the Dolphins rather, absolutely do have that. So with that being said, where do you think the undoing could be for the Dolphins?
It's a good question. I mean, the one thing I would say for them is that when they first started out as a club, they signed a lot of big game experience in Kaufusi and the Bromwich brothers. Bromwichers are obviously now retired. You look through the rest of that squad and you've got, yes, Hammer who's played Origin, Farnworth who's played some big games at the Broncos, but they do lack that finals experience. So they could have a very good regular season, we get to the back end of the year and they struggle in sort of those big games. But every team's going to go through that. Every team is building and growing. So it's sort of unavoidable. You still have to back them in. I think they can play a brand of such sort of front forward attacking footy that even in a finals context it could be hard to stop. But you have that, and then a coach like Christian Wolf, who has won titles in the Super League, but still in the NRL, very young, very raw, doesn't have that massive experience. So that could be where they come undone.
So who's the key player? There's so many X factors. Who's the one who's going to decide whether the Dolphins are pushing towards the top 4 finish or languishing in 11th or 12th?
It's really hard to say, I think. I mean, I did a bit of thinking about this last night, and look, it's easier to say the halfback. I think for pretty much every team in the NRL, the halfback's always going to be a bit of a sign of the rest of the team. But we've seen such high quality footy from Isaiah Katoa last season. If he can continue on the trajectory that he's currently on and really push into the top 2 or 3 7s in the game, then really, I think the Dolphins can achieve almost anything this year. Could there be a case of potentially a bit of second-year syndrome? Obviously, he's played more than 2 years in the NRL, but last year was so good. Can he back it up the year after? It wouldn't be the first young half we've seen to really explode and then regress a little bit the season after. So if he's not quite at his best, they could struggle a little bit for those higher-end finals positions, but I see no reason why they can't be pushing for those final spots.
Okay, so before I get your predicted range finish for the Dolphins, is this the year for Katoa? Does he play State of Origin?
It's hard. I mean, I'm still a Cleary believer. I feel like every year we lose numbers in our ranks in terms of those who believe in Cleary in the Origin arena. But I don't know. I think even if you have Moses in there, I'd still go Moses and Cleary. I think Katoa still has a couple of guys ahead of him. He will play Origin. I have very little doubt about that. But I think there's still, in the modern game we see halfbacks really peak later in their careers once they've got to about 30. So I still think there's a few guys ahead of him.
I think you said 30 to protect Nathan Cleary. I want that noted there. But no, I tend to agree with you. So all of that being said, we've noticed the strengths, the weaknesses. Katoa's the key player. Where do we think the Dolphins are going to sit in terms of the NRL ladder?
I think all things going right for them, I see them in the top 4. That's, very much best case scenario, but there is so much quality in that side even just comparing rosters on paper, they really aren't that far off from the likes of your Melbourne Storms or your Sydney Roosters. Then again, though, as I say, they don't have the big game experience. They, in previous years, have shown that while they can be in and around the finals race, eventually you get to the back end of the season and in the big moments they struggle a little bit. I still don't think they'll miss. I feel like this is the season for them. If they miss the finals and finish outside the 8, I think that'd be quite a big disappointment for them.
There you have it. Dolphins, that blowhole's going to be firing all the way into the top 4, or so we'll see. The Sea Eagles. We go from someone in the ocean or someone in the air. I don't know what to make of the Sea Eagles. I actually think it's going to be a bit of a wobbly season for them. They've obviously, the big one is obviously Daly Cherry Evans has left. Jamal Fogarty comes in, having finished as a minor premiership winner with the Canberra Raiders, coming off his best season. But he does come in as a seasoned halfback. It is a squad that has question marks over Tom Trbojevic, who I think has signed a new 2-year deal. But again, lots of injury clouds over him, and a squad that seems to be lacking in depth, quality, and experience. Talk about the Sea Eagles. Where are their strengths?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier, might have been in the last video, that you can make almost a case for anyone to be pushing for the finals this season. And there are players in the Manly side that could carry them up there. You have the likes of Turbo, you have the likes of Tolutau Coleman, who I rate highly. Hamale Olakau'atu, I think, is truly one of the premier back rowers in the comp. Absolutely. But every team has a few of those guys. If they all fire, it could happen, but I'm concerned for Manly this season. I think when you look at the forward pack that they have, unfortunately a guy like Drake Trbojevic, although on paper still a big name, he's very much regressing year on year. From memory, last season he averaged, I think it was 45 metres a game, which for a front rower is less than ideal. They've been relying...
Being polite.
Well, you know, I love Turbo. Not Turbo, I love Turbo. I love them both, to be clear. But when you're relying on a guy like Siosiwa Taukiaho as much as they did last year, you know, I'm a Roosters fan, I adore Taukiaho, but in the Big 26, is he the guy? Probably not. I do have concerns that as good a backline as they may have, if you don't have the forward momentum, you could struggle. If they have an injury to Olakau'atu, for instance, which they had towards the back end of last year, I really don't know who they look to. That's my concern for them.
Yeah, I think he's the only player who has the genuine X factor. I hate to say this about Turbo, because like you, I'm a big fan of him at his best. I think his best is behind him, and I think the Sea Eagles are almost resigned to that fact. But they do need to make sure that they keep experienced players in and around. And look, I think he can still be effective, and you just hope that he can get somewhere close to his best, because at his best, he's so capable. Tom Trbojevic, key player.
Yeah, another really interesting one. I mean, Habit would say Tom Trbojevic.
Yeah.
You know, just talking about him, if he can be at his best again, Manly could go far. But I feel like we've said that every year since 2021. I do often wonder with a guy like Tom Trbojevic, if he hadn't had that season, what would his NRL legacy really be? How much is he living off that? And I don't want to, you know, question a great or anything like that, but I think it is probably about time to ask that question. I'd go with probably a guy like Jamal Fogarty. I mean, easy to say the halfback, but the thing is for him, last year he had such a good forward pack that he was behind. I think the Raiders have one of the best forward packs in the competition. That freed him up to play his game. Is he able to do that off the back of this Manly pack? That's the question, and I think if he's unable to, Manly will really struggle this year.
Yeah, I think Jamal Fogarty is going to be pushing a boulder uphill. And I use that metaphor because I think he's going to struggle to play behind this Manly pack. Outside of, I think you're right. So what do we think? Predicted finish range for the Manly Sea Eagles?
I'm pretty pessimistic about them, to be honest. I think they've never won a spoon, but I think that this could be the season.
Ooh.
I know that is rough. It is very rough, but talk about a guy like Anthony Seibold, I don't particularly have that much faith in him as a top line coach. I think he's definitely one of the more under pressure coaches coming into this season. They could be a side who are in that finals race, but I don't think they'll be towards the upper end of that finals race, put it that way. If they finish in 11th or 12th, I think that's a solid season for them, but I'm worried. I'm very worried for them.
Yeah, I'm going to say between 9th and last. So I know that's a big range, but yeah, if things go their way, I don't see him in the top 8. And if things don't go their way, I think that Sea Eagle could get their wings clipped. The Parramatta Eels, really interesting team. I think were really struggled to start last season. kind of found some momentum, and then Mitchell Moses got injured. I'm going to kind of tie in key player with this, but is the strength and the success of the Parramatta Eels simply on Mitchell Moses?
Well, that's certainly the discussion, and I think a lot of people coming into this season sort of feel that Parramatta are going to make the 8 solely off Mitch Moses. I'm not as high on them as a lot of people are, and I'm actually keen to hear your thoughts on this, because spines are so important in the modern game, and a spine of Iongi, Pezzett, Moses, and Riley Smith or Talon Silva, it's okay. I think Moses, though, is doing a lot of heavy lifting there and maybe making that spine feel a bit better than maybe it is in reality. The way I see them is that they had a halves pairing of Moses and Dylan Brown last season, which I think is was one of the better pairings in the comp. I think they really complemented each other really well. They've lost Brown, they've got Pezzett in, and somehow people think they're going to improve. I don't really subscribe to that. What are your sort of thoughts?
I actually think it's going to work in the opposite way. I think it's going to allow Mitchell Moses to tap into his running game more. I could actually see Mitchell Moses playing like a more traditional 6, because I think Moses has shown his adaptability with the New South Wales State of Origin side. There were those question marks in last year's Origin series. Could Moses and Cleary play together? Will they clash? I never had those concerns because Mitchell Moses is such a brilliant ball runner, and I think that an element people forget that because he is the orchestrator, he is the linchpin, he is key for Parramatta. But I think he is capable of, if you tell him take a back seat, I think he's capable of doing that. And I think Pezzett is very much a true halfback. I don't think he is capable of being a 6. He doesn't have an explosive running game, but he is brilliant at marshalling the troops, kicking the balls into corners. We saw a really brilliant performance against the Bulldogs in the finals. So that tells me Pezzett can also handle pressure for a young player. So I think we might actually see a more free Mitchell Moses. And I wonder, is that actually going to open Parramatta to more success?
It's a really interesting point, actually, because I've been quite critical of the recruitment of Pezzett in the sense that I think that, yes, he is pretty much a raw traditional 7. And I've never really considered a world in which Moses isn't that dominant playmaking halfback. If he can take a back seat, yeah, I think that's the way it could work. Otherwise, I do have concerns that they are just 2 7s who could potentially be overcalling each other, both trying to, play to their strengths, which are inherently a little bit similar in that 7 role. But you are completely right in that it could free him up. I think, though, that in some respects almost makes Pezzett the key man. It depends what his role really is. I have a bit of a hot take this season, since there is so much sort of hype around Pezzett. I had a thought that they could start the season, struggle a little bit with both Moses and Pezzett trying to play as 7s, and we might see Joash Papali playing in that 6 role not too long into the year. But there's a lot of different ways that those halves could play out, I suppose, in their roles. I'm sure that Jason Riles will have a plan, but it's just a little bit hard to see exactly what that is from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I think Josh Papali will very much be a player that comes off the interchange bench and does give them a bit of tactical fluidity. I could see him using Papali almost as a lock, or even using Pezza as a lock, because he's actually quite a big body halfback. So I think he'd be more comfortable defending in the middle if you did want to move Papali to an edge. Yeah, it's a really interesting one with the Parramatta Eels. I guess you're right. I think the key man is Pezzett. And I think it's because if he plays well, I think we'll see a fully functioning, a stronger attacking performance from Parramatta. If he doesn't perform, then what you said around 2 halves playing together will happen, because I think Moses will then want to take control because he can see his halves partner struggling. So the fact that we have spoken so much about the halves, though, kind of points out the elephant in the room. Is there enough strike power in the Parramatta Eels?
Yeah, and that is the concern. I mean, obviously, having lost Zach Lomax now, you still got the likes of Adokar on one wing. You've got Will Pensini, who I rate very highly as a centre.
The forward pack, though.
Yeah, the forwards. I mean, they've got Jack DeBellin coming in through the middle. And their strike on the edges, when you look at like Kitione Katonga, I rate highly. Kamatualangi on his day is very good as well, but consistency is a concern. In years gone by, they had real dominance using the likes of Ryan Madison and Sean Lane. Sean Lane's now retired. Ryan Madison sort of fallen to the wayside a little bit. I do have a little bit of concern there. You look at Jermaine Hopgood, for instance. I mean, he had a season a couple of years ago where he was very dominant for them, but last year stepped back a little bit, ended up sort of as a front rower rather than a lock. So a lot of different ways that could play out, and it's sort of one reason why I'm not all that high on Parramatta, because I'm not sure still exactly how they are going to line up.
Yeah, and I think that points to it. Inconsistency, I think, will be the theme of the season. I think we'll see some brilliant performances. I even dare say they'll have a big upset win against the bigger side, but then they're going to lose the next week against a team that they're expected to be winning against. So for that reason, Parramatta's highest and lowest possible finish.
At their best, they make the finals. I don't think there'll be a side pushing for top 4, but could see them secure a home final, especially if Mitchell Moses is able to feature consistently and be at his very best. In terms of the lower bar, look, I still think that almost no matter what, they'll be in the race for the finals, but I probably think they might be sort of towards the lower end of that finals race coming into the year.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think Parramatta anywhere between 5th and 11th. I think that's probably about right. And finally, we come to the Cowboys. So, at risk of sounding too optimistic, are the Cowboys going to finish 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and why?
Well, this is the interesting thing. I mean, I think their spine is actually really, really good. When you look at Drinkwater at the back, Dearden, it sounds like he's going to play 6 with Jackson Purdue at 7. You've then got Reid Marnie at 9, who, is at least, I think, maybe at best similar to Robson in terms of quality, is at least not that much of a downgrade. And then Ruben Cotter at lock. I think that's good. It's the rest of the side that's the concern, particularly their forward pack. There's a lot of guys there who, like, when you look to the bench, are names that I think most NRL fans wouldn't recognise. And that's not, like, I don't mean to be needlessly insulting. I am rubbish at rugby league. I've played 1 game in my life. I'm awful at it. But, so, like, I'm not an authority in that sense. But the harsh reality is that most of those guys aren't established stars yet. Does that mean that they're going to have a point to prove? It might. But compared to other forward packs in the NRL who are full of established players, I really worry for them. And I think that there could be sort of games that are few and far between where they actually do dominate an opposition forward pack.
Yeah, look, you're being more optimistic than I'm willing to go. I agree in terms of the spine and Cotter, but like you, I think that you can't just have 5 good players. Again, look at I am the shape of a ball. I have no right to. Every player who plays for the Cowboys is better than me. I'll acknowledge that. But as an armchair expert, a professional armchair expert, I think they're really going to struggle. I'm glad you mentioned that about Reid Marnie. I think he was good for the Bulldogs. I think he was mistreated by the Bulldogs. I thought he should have played more than he did, and we'll talk about the Bulldogs in a later video to come. And I think that, again, a team who I think will win against sides that they probably shouldn't, because they're just going to be able to dig deep. But part of being a Cowboy is you get to ride the cows, but sometimes you got to pick up their shit. And unfortunately for the Cowboys, I think there's going to be a lot of shit picking this year.
Yeah, I mean, they're a side who sort of have a habit of coming out of nowhere in particular seasons and doing a lot better than a lot of people thought. That's what they're going to be hoping on this year, but expectations are certainly low. I think if you had to give a coach who's under the most pressure this season, for me, that is Todd Payten.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's struggled in recent seasons. So, yeah, in terms of their finish, look, if they're around the finals race, I think that's a massive success. Even if they do miss out on it eventually, I think that'd be a really good season. Do I think they'll get the spoon? Probably not. I think Tom Dearden is too good a player in your spine to be finishing with the spoon. But could definitely be a bottom 4 side.
Okay. You've convinced me a little bit. I'm going to say 12, between 12th and 16th. How's that?
Solid.
Great.
I like it.
If the Cowboys make the finals, Todd Payten's your NRL Coach of the Year. I think that's fair to say. That wraps up video 2 of the NRL season preview. Stay tuned, because next we're going to start looking at 2025's top 8 sides and tell you where we think they'll finish in 2026.